Hello everybody, welcome back again to the Reggae Appreciation Society. Reggae music has produced more than its fair share of uncompromising and radical personalities, but you would be hard-pressed to find anyone more hardcore than a poster boy of musical militancy that was the great Peter Tosh, a musician par excellence and full-time activist whose numerous clashes with the authorities are the stuff of legend. The stepping razor, as he became known, became synonymous with rebellion. His whole career was a case of art imitating life, as he had been a rebel since he was a child, cynical and always ready for a fight with the authorities. But in 1983, Tosh broke character completely with the release of his Mama Africa album, a body of music that showed a side to him that his fans weren't ready for. It was lighter, more celebratory, with a feel-good flavor that had the scent of victory all over it. It was audio evidence of a more seasoned, wiser, and I dare say, new Peter Tosh, who wasn't devoid of the conscious themes he had long been known for, but humanized his militant persona in a way no one ever expected. Let's take a look at the story behind the Mama Africa album. Its roots are traceable to the middle of 1982, when Peter was invited to Nigeria by his friend and EMI Records label mate Sonny Okosun, an invitation that Peter jumped at in a heartbeat. After more than 2 decades of constant war with Babylon, the music industry, and brutal victimization by the authorities, he was going to Africa, the motherland he'd always sung about and dreamt of setting foot on all his life. So later that year, he and his tour manager and sidekick Copeland Forbes took off for a 4-week adventure of a lifetime in Nigeria. He got involved in traditional rites, got arrested, hung out with Afrobeat inventor Fela Kuti, had loads of fun, and connected with the homeland in a powerful way. The incredible burst of energy and experiences from that trip are what inspired his 6th album. In fact, the song Not Gonna Give It Up was inspired by Peter discovering a man pooping into a river upstream from where he was fishing, and also title track Mama Africa came from the powerful sight of several women heading to the farm with their babies strapped to their backs. By the time it was over, the month-long pilgrimage had Peter floating on air, and when he got back to Jamaica, he was like a new man, much calmer, happier, and with a less combative edge. He was still a soldier for the culture, but one who fought Babylon with one hand and romanced the motherland with the other. It was in this state that he set up camp at the superb Dynamic Studios and assembled the once-in-a-lifetime team of instrumentalists that brought that project to life. He had at his disposal superstars like Sly Dunbar and Robbie Shakespeare, Carlton Santa Davis, Mikey Chung, Keith Sterling, Dean Fraser, and Donald Kinsey, among others. Man, now combine all these factors, and what you get are 9 phenomenal, unforgettable songs. This album opens up with an almost 8-minute long warm tribute to the motherland in Mama Africa that acknowledges the pain of separation by the transatlantic slave trade, with lyrics like "They took me away from you mama long before I was born," and serenades its qualities with words like "In you there's so much beauty, in you there's so much life, in you there's so many kingdoms, to me it's out of sight." If you're talking instrumentals, it's incredible and fuses the classic roots reggae sound with strong African rhythmic elements like Uzziah Sticky Thompson's percussions, spiced up by the Afrobeat signatures created by his friend Fela Kuti, all anchored with Peter's joyous baritone as the icing on the cake. A brilliant opener, no doubt, but before the listener thinks it's all roses and kumbaya, Tosh brings you back down to earth with the track Glass House that was a call for moral accountability and, I believe, non-violence, with the popular proverb, "People who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones," and had lyrics that went, "Harm no man, let no man harm you, do unto others as they will do unto you." Very strong words, but delivered and seasoned with a preacher's tone. I'm on the earth to give Jah praise, and all I ask for is longer days. This track was inspired by a colorful burial procession that he and Copeland Forbes witnessed in Sonny Okosun's village in Nigeria. The impact of his experiences in that same village continues with the next track, Not Gonna Give It Up, a powerful declaration of his intention to fight for Africa until the motherland is free, and invites everyone to join him. Of all his songs, this one held a special place in Peter's heart, and everywhere he performed it, he always put in very powerful and emotive performances, like he did at the World Music Festival in November of that year, where he and his band totally killed it. A militant anthem that abruptly gives way to the more mellow Stop That Train, a remake of the Wailers classic from their album Catch a Fire, a reflective number in which he sounds like an old man resigned to the fact that most of the people he's been teaching for most of his life will never understand, or rather, overstand. Yet again, a marvelous vocal performance from Peter and instrumental heroics from the band. But my personal heroes on this track were the backup singing team of Audrey Hall, Pam Hall, and American R&B singer Betty Wright, whose performance will give the I3s a run for their money. Now this brings us to the next song, which Peter hated and was determined not to record, in the awesome Johnny B. Good, a cover of a hit Chuck Berry song from 1958. This song had been suggested by the album's producer Chris Kimsey, but for many reasons Peter didn't like it. But after lots of pleading and coaxing by guitarist Donald Kinsey and Copeland Forbes, Peter would agree to do it. And this song became the biggest single on the album that charted in several countries, and today has more than 100 million plays on Spotify. The spectacular instrumentation, vocals and message continued on the next track, Where You Gonna Run, spiced up by incredible horns from trumpeters David Madden and Arnold Brackenridge. But to me, it was on the underrated song Peace Treaty that Peter would peak in terms of his songwriting and social commentary. That was a critique of the Peace Accord of 1978 between warring political gangs in Jamaica that culminated in the now legendary One Love Peace concert. Peter, who at that show delivered a withering monologue that was fiercely critical of Prime Minister Michael Manley, opposition leader Edward Tiaga, and Jamaican politicians in general, has said very boldly that the accord would fail if there was still inequality, police brutality, and no justice. There could never be peace. Peter almost paid for it with his life when some policemen almost beat him to death a few months later. But his prediction came true as the violence returned to Jamaica in 1980 in the run-up to that year's elections. And also, all the warlords who signed it had all passed away by the time he was recording this album. In one of his most cynical jibes, he said in that song, "When you signed the peace treaty, I told you it wasn't worky. All that signed that peace treaty now rests in the cemetery," referring to gang leaders Claudie Massop and Bucky Marshall, who both lost their lives to gun violence in 1979 and 1980 respectively. The 8th track, Feel No Way, is simply another underrated masterpiece, an instructive sermon about the concept of sowing and reaping, a slick and multi-layered piece of perfection that I believe is the best song on this album. The very last track, Magadog, was also a remake of an old Wailers tune from the early days at Studio One, a lyrical lesson about a magadog, which is the term for a backbiter or ingrate, a dog you take in, feed and nurture before it turns around to bite you in the backside. This song proved to be a fatal prophecy, as 4 years later, Peter's life was taken by a man called Lepo, a man he had provided for and taken care of. All the tracks on this album were recorded by November of 1982, and after mixing at Abbey Road Studios in London, hit record store shelves in January in 1983 and was received warmly by the critics. It also proved to be his biggest commercial success, as it charted in several countries around the world, like the UK, the US, Australia, and the Netherlands. It was also his most eclectic body of work, as it infused different genres that spiced up his reggae foundation, and for the first time saw Peter yielding to other influences. Some hardcore fans criticized it, but in more than any other project before him, won him new fans all over the globe. But for me, it marked a definitive moment in his life journey. At 39, going on 40, he was no longer the young firebrand who had physically gone head-to-head with the authorities at every chance, but was then becoming an elder who, though still militant in his outlook, was more circumspect, wiser, and ultimately a teacher who would stand for peace over war, as evidenced by his Grammy-winning album No Nuclear War, which was released 4 years later. I truly believe that he was evolving into a very different person, which he would have become if he had lived beyond the years he did. A shift and cooling of his fiery persona, which began with his African pilgrimage and birthed the Mama Africa album, the musical turning point in the life of the Stepping Razor. So there you have it. Thank you for watching this video today. Please leave a like, subscribe, and until next time, Jah bless.